Thank you all again for joining me today. We're talking about our immune system and ways that we can boost that this winter. I know that it's a hot topic and I can't believe it's already snowed, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. Has anyone gotten sick already this year? Yeah, quite a bit. Okay, so just a little bit about me. I'm a naturopathic doctor in Ontario, and I focus on gut health, hormones, stress, and that ties in with the immune system as well. And I'm going to be talking about how all of those things can be interconnected. I am doing virtual appointments right now just because I had my baby boy. He's with us right now with my husband, feeding him. But yeah, that's why I'm doing virtual appointments right now. And basically how I got into naturopathic medicine, first of all, when I was 6 years old, I knew I wanted to be in healthcare. Try not to get emotional because my mom was sick. But that's why I wanted to get into healthcare. But anyways, she passed away a couple years ago. And tangible health is something that I've created for her in her name. So yeah, I'm hoping that she sees what I'm doing and is proud and everything because, you know, what I'm doing as a naturopathic doctor is not just a job for me. It's so much more than that. It's really a big passion project that I have. So thank you all for also being a part of that today. Woo! Okay, so enough about me. Let's talk a little bit about what naturopathic medicine is. Has anyone seen a naturopath in this room? Okay, so quite a few of you, some of my patients actually. But basically, when we talk about naturopathic medicine, there are a few principles that we want to follow. So the first is to do no harm. We want to use the most effective but least invasive way of treating our patients. The healing power of nature. So our bodies have an innate ability to help treat and balance out whenever we have that need to. But sometimes we might need a little bit more of a boost. So for example, we could use supplements or maybe natural herbs, or some of us might even need medications. But basically our bodies are supposed to help regulate itself. And naturopathic medicine is all about trying to boost your body when it needs it, not to be reliant on anything that we're taking. So that's a little bit different than the typical medications. Identifying the root cause. So a lot of us might have multiple things going on. When we talk about, let's say, for example, if you have eczema, that could be getting worse in the winter time. With that, it's not just about your skin, it's all related. So your eczema could be related to the food you're eating. It could be related to your gut health. It could get worse at certain times of your cycle. So my job is to identify what that root cause is and treat that wholly, instead of just putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms. Treating the whole person. So understanding that everyone is very individualized, and so should your treatments from your doctor. So, you know, again, with the systemic, holistic approach. And then doctor as teacher. So I'm very passionate about education. That's why I do campaigns and events just like this, because I want you to be able to understand more about your body and how you can help support that in the best way. And of course, prevention. So we're not just talking about what do you have right now, what are you diagnosed with, and how do we treat that, but it's all about, okay, these are your susceptibilities and how do we prevent that in the future? So today's agenda, we're going to be talking a little bit about the basics of the immune system and factors affecting immune function. Then we're going to move on to gut health, cortisol, our stress hormone, and some wellness tips. and possible supplements and next steps. So the immune system, can anyone kind of like give me a definition of what they think the immune system is? Any takers? Okay.
If it was an army, there would be the guards fighting.
That's a perfect analogy to look at it. So having that perspective of the immune system being our guard, it should be, you know, if you're exposed to people who are sick, your body and your immune system should be able to fight that off because it does act like a guard. Different components of the immune system. So there's the bone marrow, the lymph nodes. Some of you might notice that if you're sick, you will get inflamed lymph nodes on your neck, perhaps, or on the top here of your chin. And there's two functional divisions of the immune system. So the innate immune system, which is what we're born with, and then the adaptive immune system, which is what we acquire later on. So for example, if let's say you had a virus, your immune system, your adaptive immune system will recognize that and hopefully fight that off the next time you encounter that virus. So there's two different parts of the immune system. There are a lot of factors that affect the immune system. So we have stress and cortisol, diet and lifestyle, gut health, insulin resistance and diabetes, and hormones and sleep. So we're going to be touching upon most of these factors today. So let's talk about the gut health. Basically, when you think about gut health, you don't think about your immune system, but actually 70% of your immune system is found in your gut. So if your gut is out of balance, that can directly impact your immune system. So there's a huge connection between our gut microbiome and immunity. And when we say gut microbiome, you've probably heard that quite a bit, but maybe you're not sure what that is exactly. So the gut microbiome is made up of different organisms in your gut. So that could be bacteria, viruses, parasites, hopefully not parasites. But with bacteria, there's actually good bacteria and harmful bacteria. And then there's opportunistic bacteria. So when we talk about opportunistic bacteria, it's actually because you have the good, the bad, and then the in-between. So when we talk about opportunistic bacteria, that's the type of bacteria that shouldn't normally cause any issues. But let's say you're not sleeping well, you're not eating well, maybe your gut is off too, then that gives the opportunity for these bacteria to invade. So that's why they're called opportunistic. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this, but there's this gut test that I've done a lot with my patients. I find that it's very, very helpful because it identifies exactly what species of bacteria you have in your microbiome. So it's kind of like a report card of your gut, and that's useful information to see what you need after to treat. Gut lining and leaky gut. Who here has heard about leaky gut? Yeah, it's a buzzword. It's very, a lot of us are talking about what is leaky gut, but essentially, if you're taking that example of the immune system being a guard, your gut, they have like a stomach, your stomach has a lining that prevents things from coming in and preventing your cells from leaving the gut. So if there are, like inflammation or use of antibiotics, stuff like that, those different factors can harm your gut lining and cause bacteria to come in more easily. Dysbiosis, so imbalances in your gut can cause things like leaky gut, chronic inflammation, and it can even cause things like autoimmune conditions. So autoimmune conditions are when your own body starts attacking itself because it doesn't recognize it as self cells anymore. Clinical nutrition. We'll talk about diet and lifestyle because that's very important. Who here has been diligent with their exercise throughout the winter too? Okay, I know some of you are lying. But clinical nutrition and lifestyle, I mean, both play hand in hand together, but let's talk about nutrition first because I get a lot of questions about this, even in clinic, about what to eat, what's the best diet for me. The answer is that there's no specific diet, in my opinion, that should be right for you. I mean, obviously, let's say if you have autoimmune condition or eczema or things like that, an anti-inflammatory diet could be beneficial. But as a naturopath, I'm not very specific of, restriction, because I think that restrictive diets can lead to disordered eating and just stress when we're eating, not knowing what to eat and stuff like that. I have a lot of patients telling me that they just won't eat just because they don't know what to eat. So we don't ever want that to be a conflict. But general guidelines, I would say, who remembers maybe I'm old, but who remembers like the Canada's food guide with the rainbows? Yeah, that has changed. It's super outdated because I think back then dairy was like #1 or something, or carbs, but it actually should be the way that we eat should be 50%, about 50% to be vegetables or fiber. So we want different colors because that allows for variations in nutrients. And if you think about it, the only way that you're getting nutrients, I should say like vitamins and minerals specifically, is from your greens, like what vegetables you're eating. Because there's not a lot of vitamins and minerals, like even though there's a little bit in meats and like other sources of protein and carbs, you're not getting a whole lot. So your variety in your nutrients are coming from your vegetables. So it should be about 50% of your plate, and 25% of your plate should be protein. The other 25% should be carbs. Let's talk about stress. Who here is stressed? Yes. Okay, so most of us are stressed in here. And I think that even if you don't think you're stressed, a lot of us internalize it and we normalize the stress. So you might not feel like maybe palpitations all the time, but in the back of your mind, you are stressed and your body sees it as well. So cortisol is our stress hormone. If you've ever seen a naturopath or maybe you're a patient of mine, we might have checked your cortisol in the past. And that's really important to check because a lot of people assume that their cortisol is high, but actually most of the time when I check cortisol, it's low for my patients. And typically when cortisol is too high, it then becomes he gets it. So first, when cortisol is high, that's when we feel that fight or flight response. But actually, eventually it comes down and we reach a burnout stage. And that's when cortisol is low. So lots of people, who Googles their symptoms. I feel like almost everyone maybe has done it before. But when you're Googling symptoms like how do I manage cortisol, it might give you herbs or supplements that lower your cortisol. But actually, if you're already low, that can make it even worse because then you're feeling even more fatigued and tired. So with stress, we have two divisions. We have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. So the sympathetic is your fight or flight, and your parasympathetic is your rest and digest. So these two nervous systems can't occur at the same time, which means that when you are trying to eat, and if you're stressed or your body internally is stressed, that's going to shut down your ability to rest, sleep, and digest your food. So some of us might feel bloated or have gas, or maybe some issues with bowel movements like constipation or diarrhea. But this is all connected, and this all connects with your immune system, because if those things are not working well, then your ability to get sick is that much higher. So now that we talked about all the problems, what can we do to actually fix this? So there are some tips on eating mindfully. So one thing is to try to eat a whole range of food, like different variety. So that could be, like, I have a patient who told me she makes soups and then she adds like a bunch of vegetables in. And that's what I like to do too, because I like to have soup when it's especially cold out, but it's an easy way to incorporate different types of vegetables. And cruciferous vegetables are typically pretty good as well, because they offer strong antioxidants and they play a role in your immune system. They offer more vitamin C. So examples of cruciferous vegetables would be things like broccoli, cauliflower, bok choy, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, those types of vegetables. But it's usually better when it's cooked because it's easier to digest. And eating a whole range of foods goes with eating vegetables of different colors. Taking a moment before you're eating. So who here eats on the go, like in the car or maybe at your desk working? So a lot of us, right? So we want to make sure that we're stopping those habits, because when you're eating and you're working or you're thinking about things other than eating, that really disrupts your digestive system as well, because again, that activates your sympathetic nervous system. And yeah, so sometimes if your schedule permits, I would suggest maybe doing even like a 5-minute walk, or like go outside, get some fresh air, even if it's cold, before your meal, just so you have that separation. Because especially if you're working from home, or you can't leave your desk, you're just, you're not having that ability to separate and have those boundaries with eating. Eating more live foods, that's kind of hard, because with live foods, with, living in Canada, it's hard to grow local foods and stuff like that. But actually, they have a lot of stuff in the marketplace here, and all their food here is local and organic. So if you've had a chance to eat here, all of the foods and vegetables, those are grown locally, which adds a layer of good prebiotics in our food. So when we talk about, probiotics, prebiotics, the prebiotics are the things that will feed your gut. If you take probiotics, that's more like you might need it for a certain amount of time to help boost your system, but after you stop, you don't reap those benefits anymore. So it's really important to constantly feed your gut the food that it needs, which is the prebiotics. And things like, so for example, here they have sauerkraut, they have pickled vegetables. So there's also like pickled beets. Those are examples of things that have prebiotics, kimchi, stuff like that. And having more home cooked meals. So one thing I love about here at Frank's Organic is that they have ready to eat foods. And I tell some of my patients about that, because if you're super busy, let's say with work and like your schedule, sometimes it's just impossible to cook. They have a lot of options here, where, there's like pizzas. And if you look at the ingredients, they're all organic and they don't have any additives or preservatives. That's a big thing that I look out for, is reading the ingredients of my foods, if I'm getting them prepared or like frozen. So there's a big misconception with frozen foods, because it's not all bad. I think that like frozen foods are a good alternative when you're super busy and you can't make fresh food all the time. But it just depends on what they add to those products. So yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be around here after showing you guys. But they have soups here that are all whole foods. So when I say whole foods, they're real ingredients like carrots, squash, like things like that. And they don't add anything extra to that, like xanthan gum, citric acid, all those different types of processed foods. Okay, so sorry, it says women's health, but I meant the immune system. So possible supplements for the immune system, and this is not like medical advice or anything, but common ones would be vitamin D. We really need to check what your vitamin D levels are at because it is possible to overdose. So with vitamin D levels, if you were to overdose, it would affect your kidney. So it's not good to just DIY it. You should get your levels checked and dose accordingly. But sometimes, you know, if I'm thinking that I'm feeling like I'm gonna get sick, I'll do extra, like a little bit extra vitamin D. So what's good for me is 10 drops. So I'll do like that extra and take that. Zinc. So there's a lot of buzz around zinc, but you have to be careful with your zinc because zinc depletes copper. So if you have a zinc product, make sure that there's copper in it as well. Typically, it's a 20-to-1 ratio. So for every 20 milligrams of zinc, you want 1 milligram of copper, just so that you're not depleting your sources of copper. And it's not something that I would take all the time either. And you can actually check your zinc levels in your blood. Vitamin C, so this is a really common one. You just have to be careful because it is possible to overdose on vitamin C. I don't know if anyone's ever tried that, like taking too much vitamin C. What happens is you just have diarrhea, so it's not fun. But don't overdo it on the vitamin C because it doesn't always help. I think it's a big misconception that like, oh, I'm sick, let's take vitamin C. But usually you want to be at a good level to maintain and prevent being sick. Because once you're sick, you take a bunch of vitamin C, you might actually not feel better. There's other things that you could do to help. Echinacea, different herbs. So I'm a big herb girl. If you're one of my patients, you'll know that. But I make like tinctures and stuff. And that's just like a customized formula that's right just for you, according to your labs and stuff. So with herbs, one of my big secrets is actually echinacea. But you have to be careful, or not careful, but mindful of when you're taking it, because echinacea is a really good immune stimulant. And there's some antimicrobial properties as well. So if you are already sick, echinacea can help, but it's even better if you're able to take it ahead of time. So I'm pretty sure they have it next door, but they have the A-Vogel echinacea throat spray. That's one of my secrets. My husband's nodding, because every time he feels like he's getting sick, I always spray it in his face. But I always, one time I did it in your sleep. I don't know if you remember. But basically the echinacea spray is very effective if you're doing it quick. So even if, let's say you feel something in the morning, you're gone all day for work, and then you try doing it, that might be too late already. So I always have it, it's small. I always have it in my purse. I actually have like multiple bottles at all times. But that's really helpful as well. And ginger, you know, they have the anti-inflammatory effects, and that could be helpful when you're sick too. Other herbs can be things like licorice, so not the licorice candy, but there's herbal supplements that have licorice inside, and that could be beneficial for both your gut and also when you're sick. So what is left to explore now that you have so much information about this? So first, we need to talk about clinical nutrition that's individualized. Like I said, I'm not a big person on diet restriction, so it is important to recognize what is right for you. Sometimes if, our immune system's overactive, we could have food sensitivities. So there are tests to check for food sensitivities to see what could be triggering inflammation, causing you maybe gut imbalances that can be contributing to making your immune system weaker. And my goal for that is not to restrict yourself and just eliminate those foods forever, but it's just for the time. And then we can slowly reintroduce it with proper protocol. Identifying any nutrient deficiencies. So it'd be a great time to check for things like zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C deficiencies. And then that way you know exactly what to dose with. Also, B12 is a big one too. So the B vitamins are important for cofactoring for stress pathways, but also your immune system. Metabolic considerations, so things like insulin resistance. When we have insulin resistance, that can be a huge factor in suboptimal immune system. So I don't know if you will recognize the test, but it's called HbA1c if you have routine blood work for this. It's actually even more efficient if you were to check for insulin itself. So insulin and glucose gives you, there's a calculation to do that, just to determine your insulin resistance. It's called HOMA-IR. And that is great because I find that the HOMA-IR score changes before that HbA1c number. So for example, let's say you've started to get insulin resistance today. If you check your HbA1c, it might not change yet. So it might say that you're all fine. But if you check your HOMA-IR score with your actual insulin number, then it can tell you where you're at in terms of insulin resistance way quicker than the HbA1c can detect. So typically, if patients are, let's say, at risk, because I would say, honestly, about 80% of the time when I check HbA1c, my patients are in the at-risk section. You might not notice that because typically it's not really a red flag unless you're a very high number and diabetic. But to me, if you're at risk, that's important to address right then and there. So typically the range is 5.5 to 5.9 for being at risk, and then 6 to 6.4 is pre-diabetic, and then over that is diabetes. So I would be cautious, above 5, maybe 5.3. That would be something that I would look into for maybe testing insulin. But yeah, insulin resistance has a direct impact on immune function as well. Different assessment tools, which I will talk about in the next slide. Investigating things in your microbiome. So you don't really know what's going on in your gut unless you test for it, because not everyone who has gut imbalances will show signs of the bloating and the gas and acid reflux. So it's important to check all of that. And of course, if there are multiple symptoms that you're feeling, then it's really vital to get that checked and to connect those dots. This is one of the last things we'll talk about is the functional medicine testing. So there are quite a few. Some we talked about already, but there's the hormone testing, and when we're sick and stuff, that can directly impact the menstrual cycle. So there's a huge connection between your menstruation and your immune system. The food sensitivity test, we talked a little bit about this, but it's just a blood work test that tests for over 220 foods, and it identifies which ones are more sensitive. And like I said, there are things to try to train your body to not react to those foods anymore. And then there's the stool test that we kind of mentioned that actually gives you that report card of your gut microbiome. So I find that if you have a chance to do it, you should do it at least once in your life, because I feel it does give you so much valuable information. And there's actually a section in that test that looks at your immune system, what your secretary IgA is at, which is your first line of defense for your immune system when you have, like, it's that first instinct and first response. So it's important to know where that's at, because it could be overactive, where you would kind of display more autoimmune sort of symptoms, or it could be underactive and you could get sick very often and stuff like that. And there's also a section that identifies what your inflammation levels are at. And of course, nutrient panels. So we talked a little bit about this, but getting those things checked in your blood work, in your urine test is important as well. So I have some recipes on my Instagram and on my website, so you guys can check that out if you're not already following me. It's dr.jennifertang for Instagram, and my website is tangiblehealth.ca. It's all on that card as well. And that's about it. That's my presentation. Thank you so much for being here. Is there anything that you have questions about? You can ask me now and we can talk about that now. Any questions? Okay.
You know, speaker, I can speak.
Okay.
Everyone can hear me.
There you go.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. It was a nice presentation, very educational and informing. The question I have is just on the autoimmune deficiency of the system.
Mm-hmm.
Normal patients day to day are walking around doing their regular activities. How do you know, and what are the signs of autoimmune system disease or symptoms of?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. Sorry, I'm just gonna go back here. So for autoimmunity, I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm finding it really more common these days with autoimmunity. And for example, even things like if you have imbalance in your thyroid, for example, I see this really often where you could have hypothyroidism, and most of the time it's autoimmune, but people might not always check for it because it might not necessarily change the clinical treatment. So like if they have hypothyroidism, whether or not it's autoimmune or if it's an issue of the thyroid, they'll be given the same medication. So I understand it from that point. But for me, it's important, in my opinion, to know if you have that autoimmunity, because then we can address it, because that tells me that that's the root cause of things. So to answer your question, like how do you know if you have autoimmune? Really, you just have to do blood work, because there's a lot of things that you might not see with symptoms. But common autoimmune conditions can be things like lupus, which affects your kidney and your liver. So if you do like a normal kidney panel with your blood work, you should be able to identify that. But then there's also another type of lupus that only affects your skin. It's called discoid lupus. So that would be something that you would you would actually see. Thyroid, we talked about like Hashimoto's or Graves' disease. Those are autoimmune conditions of your thyroid, and you can check antibodies through your blood work as well. And then Sjogren's is another really common one, which is autoimmunity of your glands. So if you have dry mouth, dry eyes, that's a very common one as well. MS is also another one, but usually you'd want to do like an MRI for that if you have like tingling or those types of symptoms. But the interesting thing about autoimmunity that I find anyway is that sometimes I'll have patients have a flare-up and they're testing positive, but then when they're not in a flare-up, it's negative. So like, for example, I've had patients where with me, we test it and it's positive. They wait like a year to see their specialist. By that time, it's negative. And then they're like, okay, you're fine. But the problem is you're only getting that snapshot, right? So it's important to check when you're having a flare up and when you're not, just to see what that's at, because levels can change all the time. So in my opinion, if you have that autoimmune condition, but sometimes it's like normal, sometimes it's off, I would still treat it as an autoimmune condition, like depending on what's going on. I don't know if that answers your question. Does anyone else have questions?
Wait.
Oh, sorry. Oh, thank you.
I just realized that the supplements that you can get at the grocery store are not very good for you. Can we get any of the high quality organic supplements through you?
That's a good question. Yeah, so they have, so what I look for is professional brands. I love that you brought this up because I have lots of patients who come to me and they're like, I'm on all these things, it's from Costco, or like it's from Walmart or Shoppers. Those, unfortunately, they don't have the cleanest ingredients, and while they're cost effective, there's a reason why it's cost effective. It's because they mass produce and they have some additives and stuff like that, so they're not able to make them as clean. So when I'm looking at supplements, I always look at the quality and the dose and what's actually in those products. So yeah, like if you're a patient of mine, I'll usually guide you to the exact right supplement for you because there's so much out there. It's really hard to see and to DIY that. But if you're just generally looking, don't get anything. I would say don't get anything that's like a very specialized blend. Like for example, if you see something that's like digestive health, anti-bloating, something like that, that's marketing towards that, that's what gets people, right? Because you read that and you're like, I have bloating, so I'm going to get this supplement. But there's usually like a complicated amount of blend that's in that supplement that you might not know if it's actually right for you. So I would try to avoid that. Like if you're going to buy supplements on your own, start with maybe the basics. So like things like vitamin D. And again, you have to know what your levels are at to know the dosing. Or like vitamin C you can have in your house, and looking for professional brands. So that would be companies that are like backed with like naturopaths and other doctors, researchers and stuff like that. Next door, they have a few of those brands, like Avogel is a popular one. The same brand as the throat spray I was talking about. And they have quite a few next door, so you can take a look at that as well.
Thank you.
Hi there, excellent presentation. Thank you very much. I just wanted for the gentleman here to let him know that we're building out our supplement section just next door as well. Just very specific, high quality items. So come back in a little bit and you'll be able to find like just some great products. My question is around some of the testing. People here may or may not be aware of some of the downside to the PCR test. Applies testing for COVID, that type of thing. And there's new testing coming out that's more accurate. Are you looking into implementing any sort of DNA sequencing or anything like that into the practice? Or do you see any other more accurate testing models to help with accuracy and diagnosis coming out from your side of things?
Yeah, we have a lot of options for functional medicine testing. For example, like the stool testing, we have lots of different options for patients. So yeah, definitely there's like a variety of options there. Yeah.
I do.
Hi.
So this question actually just came up to me now. Since you brought up.
This is my husband. I don't know what he's asking. I'm kind of
Since you
scared.
brought up Google Farm, how does a tool like ChatGPT bring a different challenge to your practice these days?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think that, I've thought about this too, because I feel like a lot of our jobs are taken over by AI and stuff. And I think about that sometimes. I'm like, what if my patients just like rely on that versus coming to see me, right? But there's, one thing that AI cannot replace is human interaction. And that will never be the case, I feel.
thought you were gonna say you.
But yeah, that human interaction is so important because yes, you can write down all your symptoms on ChatGPT, can generate you something, even like probably a supplement plan, I'm guessing. But the problem is ChatGPT does not know you and like all the other things that we would talk about. Like my initial consults are up to 90 minutes and we talk all about your health history and your lifestyle, your diet, all of that. And then we curate a plan for you. So I really think for sure that AI, I don't think they can ever replace what we do with one-on-one patients. Mm-hmm.
Once the mic gets hot.
Oh, over there. Okay.
One thing about
Come to you after.
salad and greens, if somebody has a stomach problem, it's best to be steamed and light cooked. That's what I was told. Yeah, and the second thing is vitamin C. Regular vitamin C destroyed by the strong stomach ache. So we take the post-mal vitamin C that goes through the intestine. So vitamin C requires Canadian manufacturer, not all Canadian. We shop at Nature's Emporium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that. So your first question was, first of all, the vitamin C, the liposomal vitamin C, that's a great point you bring up because that is something that I do value as well. I think it's like not everyone needs it, but certain people for sure, if I find that they could have beneficial use from it. The liposomal vitamin C is absorbed in a different way. So especially when we're dealing with the immune system. So I'm glad you brought that up. Usually it's in like a liquid form and you have to put it in the fridge. And then your second point about the steamed vegetables, I do agree. Like there's like I said, with the cruciferous vegetables specifically, those ones, like if you eat broccoli and like cabbage raw, sometimes you can feel it upset your stomach. So I do agree with steaming it lightly or cooking it, even though some of those vitamins, some people will argue that some of those vitamins and minerals will get lost with heat and cooking. But when you're talking about actual absorption and stuff, I think there's like benefits versus the cost of it. So yeah, that's a good point. Especially in the winter time, I think it's like good to cook your food. Sure.
Just wanted to know the cost of your consultation and follow-ups.
Okay, yes. So if you have insurance, we don't do direct billing, but we will provide you with everything you need to get reimbursed. But my initial visits are $265, and then follow-ups will range between $105 to $185, I believe. Yeah. Just depending on the time we need.
Worth it.
Thanks, Asha.
Blood tests covered? Like, or do you have to have your blood tests done for your doctor? Because that's what mine is.
Sorry, one more time, I'm off the phone.
Sorry.
In the past, when I've seen a naturopathic doctor, when you ask for the blood, like when they prescribe the blood test that you have to go get, you pay for that, like through the naturopathic doctor because it's not covered under own care. I know that there's certain tests that only the doctor can actually recommend, like for example, so if you're having severe C plus, is it C plus? What's the protein one? Cardiovascular disease.
Oh, CRP?
CRP.
Yeah.
So if you want to have that test done, and then if you want to dig deeper, then your doctor actually has to prescribe that. I don't believe that Ontario should not allow naturopathic doctors to prescribe any blood test that you need and any medication. So I'm hoping that you can follow what we're doing in Alberta. But for your clinic, or is it the same practice no matter what naturopathic doctor you're seeing, where if you need to have certain tests done, you have to go to your doctor?
That's a good question. So no, there's maybe, I'm not sure if you maybe saw like a licensed naturopath, but if you're licensed in Ontario like I am, we're able to do like a big variety of tests. So for example, the CRP I can do, I do like panels, like female hormone panels, healthy living panel that includes all those markers like liver, cholesterol, your kidneys, like everything. Vitamins, minerals, I can test all of that. Even like the antibodies we talked about for autoimmunity, those are sometimes not all doctors will test for that if they don't think you need it. But as a naturopath, I have done that before. So there is that potential that I could give you a list and you can bring it back to your family doctor to do. But there are like pros and cons. So pros, yes, it's covered under OHIP, but there's that hassle that you have to get into your medical doctor. Then you come back to me with the results and then we go through it. So, you know, in terms of convenience, if you don't mind paying out of pocket a bit, we can do the full panel. Because typically, even if I give you a list for your family doctor to do, they might not find value in doing everything. So sometimes it is cheaper to do like a full panel that Life Labs offers because it's cheaper than doing the individual labs. But yeah, we can check all of that.
I just want to let everyone here know that I had a really bad experience with my doctor. My naturopathic doctor said I had cardiovascular disease. And I showed up with my doctor. She asked me a couple questions and she said you have a 0.47 chance of dying of a heart attack. And I had elevated CRP. I had everything, every marker indicated I had an issue. And my doctor, because I walked in looking like I do today, she said, "You're fine."
Mm-hmm.
But everything inside me was not fine. So I just want to let everyone here know that if Dr. Tang finds something where you need to go and have further investigation done that she can't do because she's limited under the guidelines of our healthcare system. And if your doctor says you're fine, find another doctor. So that's where I find, like, I wish that our healthcare system could actually become a little bit closer together so that when the professionals are sitting with you and they notice something that you can get, because my doctor couldn't do a CT scan. My doctor, my naturopathic doctor, she couldn't prescribe what I needed in order to like additional investigation. So naturopathic doctors are lifesavers, is all I'm gonna say, is as far as, you know, if you don't feel right, that's where you go. And then I'm not her patient, I'm just gonna say that's where you go. Like if you feel off, there's something wrong, and they find out why, your doctor never will. So anyway.
Thanks for sharing your experience. Sorry that you had to go through that. But yeah, I have a lot of patients who have the same, like they show up like looking like you know, you're walking, you're talking, you can go to work, whatever. And they're like, yeah, you're fine, but you don't feel fine. And it kind of goes back to like what I was talking about with autoimmunity, because that's the thing with medicine sometimes is like, if you're not like testing hugely high or like red flag level, they might say that like, you know, you look fine and you're fine. The chances of this is whatever. But yeah, thanks for sharing your experience, because that is my goal, is to help healthcare again. Because yeah, it's unfortunate that we have to experience that.
Don't share that video.
Cut that out.
Okay, no problem.
Does anyone else have a question? No? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate your time on a Wednesday night. If you've had all your samples, you can do a walkthrough at the marketplace. They're doing 10% off, which they don't usually do for just like the general public. So take advantage of that. If you have any questions, there's so much staff here to help. But if you want to ask me anything on your own, feel free to as well. Thank you so much.
Good job, mommy.
Thanks. Hello, sweetie. Hello. Thank you.